The first thing I noticed was the blood. It was running slowly from the side of the man's head, disappearing into the collar of his expensive black coat. He was lying in a dark alley behind a row of closed restaurants in downtown Chicago, completely motionless. I dropped the paper bag I was carrying. "Sir?" No response. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "Please wake up, sir." Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and called 911. But before I could explain what happened, the man suddenly moved. His fingers grabbed my wrist. His eyes opened for barely a second. And the first words he whispered were not a plea for help. They were a warning. "Don't call anyone." Welcome back to Karma Stories Hub. Today's story is about family, betrayal, manipulation, and the moment karma finally catches up with people who thought they'd never face consequences. If you enjoy satisfying revenge and emotional justice stories, you're in the right place. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get into today's story. My name is Jasmine Carter, and at 26, I had learned not to expect much from life. I worked 2 jobs in Chicago. During the mornings, I cleaned offices in a medical building. At night, I worked the closing shift at a small diner near the river. I wasn't ashamed of either job. They paid my rent, kept food on my table, and helped me take care of my younger brother, Marcus. Our mother had passed away 3 years earlier, and our father had been gone long before that. So Marcus and I had learned to depend on each other. That night, my shift ended around 11:30. It was freezing outside. The kind of Chicago cold that slipped through your jacket and made your fingers hurt. Normally, I took the bus home. But that night, the bus route had been delayed, and I decided to walk several blocks to another stop. I cut through the alley because it was faster. I had walked that route dozens of times. I knew which doors were locked, which dumpsters were overflowing, and which security lights flickered every few seconds. What I didn't know was that someone had been lying in the shadows. The man on the ground looked completely out of place. His coat alone probably cost more than my monthly rent. His shoes were polished. His watch was enormous. And beside him was a black SUV with one of its rear doors hanging open. For a few seconds, I wondered if I should keep walking. Then I saw his hand move. That's when I ran toward him. I crouched beside his head and noticed something strange. There was no wallet on the ground. No phone. No identification. Nothing. Just a small silver cufflink lying several feet away. I reached for it. Before my fingers touched it, the man grabbed my wrist again. His eyes opened. "Listen to me," he whispered. I leaned closer. "Who did this to you?" He swallowed painfully. Then he looked toward the entrance of the alley. "They're coming back." A cold feeling went through me. I stood up and looked behind me. The alley was empty. But somewhere beyond the buildings, I heard the distant sound of a car engine. The man tightened his grip. "Please," he whispered. "If you want to stay alive." He stopped. His eyes closed again. And the headlights of a black sedan suddenly appeared at the far end of the alley. The black sedan rolled slowly into the alley. My stomach dropped. I looked down at the man. He was still conscious, but barely. "Who are they?" I whispered. He didn't answer. The sedan stopped about 30 yards away. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out. He wore a dark jacket and baseball cap, but what caught my attention was the way he kept looking around. Not like someone searching for a friend. Like someone checking whether there were witnesses. I grabbed my phone again. The 911 operator was still connected. "Ma'am," the dispatcher said. "Are you still there?" I pressed the phone against my chest and whispered, "Yes." "Can you safely move away from the injured person?" I looked at the sedan. Then at the unconscious man. "No." I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because leaving him there felt wrong. Maybe because something about his warning had convinced me that the people coming toward us weren't there to help. The man on the ground suddenly opened his eyes. "Behind the dumpster," he whispered. "What?" "Go." I hesitated. Then I heard footsteps. I grabbed his arm and pulled as hard as I could. He was much heavier than I expected. I managed to drag him behind a large metal dumpster just as the tall man turned the corner. I crouched beside the injured stranger, trying desperately not to breathe too loudly. The footsteps stopped. "Check the SUV." Another voice came from the sedan. "He's not there." My heart nearly stopped. They were looking for him. And now they were only a few feet away from us. I covered my mouth. The stranger reached toward me. His hand found mine. His fingers were ice cold. Then the tall man said something that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Whitmore can't disappear. Not tonight." Whitmore. That was the first time I heard his name. A few seconds later, the men moved back toward the sedan. The engine started. I waited until the headlights disappeared. Then I slowly stood. The stranger was unconscious again. I called 911 back and gave the dispatcher our location. Within minutes, police officers and paramedics arrived. The man was taken away in an ambulance. One officer asked me what happened. I told him everything. Almost everything. I didn't mention the warning. I didn't mention what I'd overheard. And I definitely didn't mention the silver cufflink I'd picked up. I slipped it into my coat pocket before the police arrived. I don't know why. Maybe instinct. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some part of me already knew that the little piece of metal would matter later. At the hospital, I was asked to wait because the police wanted a formal statement. Nearly 2 hours passed. Then a detective walked toward me. She was in her 40s, with short brown hair and tired eyes. "Ms. Carter?" "Yes." "My name is Detective Lena Morales." She sat beside me. "The man you found is Daniel Whitmore." I stared at her. "Is he okay?" "He's alive." I exhaled. "Thank God." Detective Morales studied my face. "Do you know who Daniel Whitmore is?" I shook my head. "No." She seemed surprised. "He's the founder and CEO of Whitmore Technologies." The name meant nothing to me. Then she added quietly, "He's worth several $billions." I looked toward the hospital room. The unconscious man I'd found in an alley wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the richest men in the country. And suddenly, I understood why someone had wanted him left there. Detective Morales leaned closer. "There's something else you should know." "What?" She lowered her voice. "We found something missing from his belongings." My heart began beating faster. "What?" "A flash drive." She paused. "And according to Mr. Whitmore's security team, whatever was on that drive could be worth more than money." I said nothing. Because at that exact moment, I felt the small silver cufflink inside my pocket. And for the first time that night, I wondered whether I hadn't just found a billionaire. Maybe I'd accidentally found the one piece of evidence someone was willing to kill for. By the time I got home, it was almost 3 in the morning. Marcus was asleep on the couch. He worked early shifts at a grocery store, and he'd always told me not to wake him when I came home late. But that night, I couldn't stop staring at him. I kept thinking about the man in the alley. Daniel Whitmore. A billionaire. A missing flash drive. And men who had apparently been searching for him. I quietly walked into my bedroom and locked the door. Then I pulled the silver cufflink from my coat pocket. Under the light, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was a tiny engraving on the back. W17. I turned it over several times. It looked expensive, but otherwise ordinary. I placed it on my nightstand. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" Nobody spoke. I waited. Hello? A man's voice finally came through. You should have kept walking. My entire body went cold. Who is this? You don't know what you found. I stood up. Are you threatening me? A quiet laugh came through the phone. No. I'm giving you advice. The call ended. I stared at the screen. For several seconds, I couldn't move. Then Marcus knocked on my door. Jasmine? I quickly hid the cufflink. Yeah? You okay? I opened the door. His sleepy expression changed when he saw my face. What happened? Nothing. Don't give me that. I sat on the edge of the bed. I found someone tonight. I told him about the injured man. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't mention the phone call. And I didn't mention the cufflink. Marcus listened carefully. When I finished, he looked worried. Jazz, you need to stay away from this. I know. I'm serious. So am I. He looked at me. You always think you can fix everything. I smiled faintly. Maybe I just don't like leaving people helpless. He shook his head. That can get you hurt. He was right. I just didn't know how right he was. The next morning, I received another call. This time, it was Detective Morales. Mr. Whitmore is awake. I sat up. How is he? He asked about you. Me? Yes. I couldn't understand why. What did he say? He asked whether the young woman who found him was still alive. My stomach tightened. Why would he ask that? I don't know, she said. But he wants to speak with you. I hesitated. Then she added, there's something you should know before you decide. What? Someone entered Mr. Whitmore's hospital room last night. I froze. What? They didn't steal anything. Then what did they do? They disconnected one of the security cameras. I felt a chill crawl up my arms. Did they hurt him? No. Then why? Detective Morales paused. Because they left something behind. What? A message. My throat went dry. What message? She said it slowly. Tell the girl from the alley to stay silent. I looked across my bedroom. The silver cufflink was still sitting on my nightstand. For the first time, I realized the people behind this weren't simply trying to hide what happened to Daniel Whitmore. They were watching me. And somehow, they already knew exactly who I was. I almost told Detective Morales I wanted nothing to do with Daniel Whitmore. Almost. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the fear in Daniel's voice when he'd told me not to call anyone. Or maybe it was the fact that someone had already found out where I lived. I'll come, I finally said. Detective Morales picked me up that afternoon. Before getting into her car, I looked back at our apartment. Marcus was at work. I suddenly wished I'd told him everything. But I knew he'd try to stop me. And I wasn't ready to walk away. At the hospital, 2 security officers stood outside Daniel's room. Detective Morales showed her badge. The door opened. Daniel Whitmore looked nothing like the powerful billionaire I'd seen in photographs. He was pale. Exhausted. There was a bandage above his eyebrow, and his right arm was connected to an 4. But his eyes were sharp. The moment he saw me, he stared for several seconds. You're Jasmine. I nodded. Yes. He looked at Detective Morales. Can you give us a minute? She hesitated. Then she stepped outside. I stayed near the door. Daniel noticed. You don't trust me. Should I? He almost smiled. No. That answer surprised me. He slowly sat up. I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. He looked toward the window. Those men weren't trying to rob me. I figured that out. They were looking for something. The flash drive? His expression changed. You know about that? Detective Morales told me. Daniel stared at me. Did she tell you what's on it? No. Good. He leaned back against the pillow. Because if you knew, you'd be in even more danger. I crossed my arms. I'm already in danger. He didn't argue. Instead, he asked, did you find anything in the alley? My heart stopped. For a moment, I considered lying. Then I remembered the warning I'd received. I reached into my purse and pulled out the silver cufflink. Daniel's face went completely still. Where did you get that? It was beside you. He stared at it like he'd seen a ghost. Then he whispered, that's not mine. I frowned. What? He shook his head. No. I mean, it belongs to someone who works for me. Who? Daniel looked toward the closed door. Ethan Cole. The name sounded familiar. Your security chief? Yes. I remembered seeing his picture on a business website. Tall. Gray hair. Always standing beside Daniel at public events. Daniel lowered his voice. Ethan told the police he wasn't anywhere near the alley. I looked at the cufflink. But this was beside you. Exactly. A terrible thought entered my mind. You think your own security chief attacked you? I think someone inside my company betrayed me. Who? Daniel looked directly into my eyes. That's what the flash drive was supposed to prove. Before I could respond, the hospital door opened. Detective Morales stepped inside. Her expression was tense. Mr. Whitmore, we have a problem. Daniel looked at her. What happened? She held up her phone. The police recovered security footage from a nearby building. She turned the screen toward us. A grainy image showed the black SUV entering the alley. Then another vehicle appeared. A second black sedan. I watched the footage carefully. A man stepped out. His face wasn't visible. But I recognized the coat. My breath caught. I had seen that coat before. Not in the alley. Not on television. At the hospital. I looked at Daniel. Who was with you yesterday before you left your office? He frowned. Ethan. My stomach dropped. Then Detective Morales said something that made everything worse. The footage shows Ethan's car leaving the alley less than 3 minutes after Mr. Whitmore was attacked. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time, the billionaire looked genuinely afraid. But then his phone began ringing. The screen showed one name. Ethan Cole. Daniel didn't answer. The call stopped. A second later, a text appeared. Daniel read it. Then he handed me the phone. The message contained only 6 words. You should have stayed in the alley. I stared at the message on Daniel's phone. You should have stayed in the alley. My hand suddenly felt cold. Daniel took the phone back. Don't respond, Detective Morales said. I wasn't planning to. She looked at me. Jasmine, I need you to tell me exactly what you remember about that night. I already told you. Everything. I thought for a moment. Then I remembered something. The SUV. What about it? When I found Daniel, the rear door was open. Daniel looked at me. That's important. Why? Because my driver always locks the doors. Detective Morales immediately made a note. What else? I hesitated. The man who came into the alley said something. What? He said, Mr. Whitmore can't disappear. Not tonight. Daniel's expression changed. He knew I was there. Obviously. No, Daniel said. You don't understand. He looked at Detective Morales. Only 3 people knew I was meeting someone that night. Who? Me. Ethan. And my CFO, Rebecca Lane. The room became silent. Rebecca? I asked. Daniel nodded. She was supposed to receive the flash drive. What was on it? He looked at me. Financial records. That doesn't sound like something people would attack you over. It wasn't ordinary financial records. He paused. For almost 2 years, someone inside my company has been moving money through shell companies. My eyes widened. How much? Over $80 million. I stared at him. 80 million? Daniel nodded. And I believe the money wasn't being stolen by one person. What do you mean? He lowered his voice. I think several executives were involved. Detective Morales frowned. Do you have proof? Daniel looked at me. I had proof. Had? The flash drive disappeared. I suddenly remembered the silver cufflink. Then why was Ethan's cufflink beside you? Daniel didn't answer. Detective Morales did. Because someone may have wanted us to believe Ethan was responsible. Daniel nodded slowly. That is exactly what worries me. A few minutes later, Detective Morales left to speak with hospital security. I stayed with Daniel. He looked exhausted. You should go home, he said. I probably should. Jasmine. I looked at him. Thank you. For what? For coming back. I smiled faintly. I didn't exactly have a choice after someone threatened me. He actually laughed. It was the first normal expression I'd seen on his face. Then his phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Ethan. It was Rebecca Lane. Daniel answered. Rebecca? A woman's frightened voice came through the speaker. Daniel, don't trust anyone at the hospital. He sat up. Why? Because. The call suddenly cut out. Daniel stared at the screen. I looked at him. What happened? He didn't answer. Then Detective Morales rushed back into the room. Jasmine, where's your purse? I pointed toward the chair. She grabbed it and opened it. Her expression immediately changed. What? She pulled out the silver cufflink. I stared. That isn't the one I gave Daniel. What? Detective Morales held it up. This one was planted in your purse. My heart stopped. I looked inside. My wallet was there. My keys were there. Everything looked normal. Except for one thing. A small folded piece of paper. Detective Morales opened it. There was only one sentence. Ask Daniel why your mother knew Rebecca Lane. I couldn't breathe. My mother? Daniel's face had gone completely pale. He looked at me. Jasmine. What? He swallowed. I knew your mother. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a billionaire, a missing flash drive, or $80 million. It was about my family. And whatever Daniel had been hiding from me for 20 years. For several seconds, I couldn't say a word. My mother? Daniel nodded slowly. Her name was Denise Carter. I felt my chest tighten. How do you know my mother? He looked down. She worked for my company. My mother cleaned offices. No, Daniel said quietly. She was an accountant. I stared at him. That doesn't make sense. I know. My mother never told me that. She couldn't. Why? Daniel looked toward Detective Morales. Because she discovered the money. The words barely registered. What money? The $80 million. I sat down. Daniel explained that 20 years earlier, my mother had been working in the accounting department of his company. She had noticed payments being made to several companies that appeared legitimate but were actually controlled by people connected to senior executives. She had reported it. Then, according to Daniel, the investigation disappeared. My mother told me someone was threatening her, I whispered. Daniel nodded. She came to me. What happened? I promised I'd protect her. He paused. I failed. I felt tears burning my eyes. You knew my mother was in danger? Yes. And you did nothing? I tried. My voice rose. That's not an answer. Daniel didn't defend himself. Instead, he reached for the glass of water beside his bed. I was 29 years old. I had just taken control of the company. I thought I could handle everything myself. And I trusted the wrong people. He told me my mother had eventually resigned. A few weeks later, she disappeared from the company completely. But she hadn't left quietly. Before she left, she created a private record of everything she had discovered. Daniel had spent years trying to find it. Why? Because I finally realized the people responsible were still inside my company. I wiped my eyes. Did my mother know? She knew enough to be afraid. I remembered my childhood. The locked filing cabinet in our apartment. The way my mother used to lower her voice whenever she talked about work. The strange phone calls. I had always assumed she was simply stressed. Now everything looked different. Detective Morales stepped closer. Did your mother ever mention Rebecca Lane? I shook my head. Daniel answered. She knew Rebecca before Rebecca became CFO. I looked at him. How? They worked on the same accounting team. A terrible silence filled the room. Then my phone vibrated. I pulled it from my pocket. There was a message from Marcus. Jazz, where are you? Someone came to the apartment asking about you. My blood ran cold. I immediately called him. He answered after one ring. Jasmine? Are you okay? Yeah. I'm at the grocery store. Did someone come to the apartment? Yes. What did they want? They asked if you lived there. My heart began racing. What did you tell them? That I didn't know where you were. Good. There was silence. Then Marcus said something that made my stomach drop. Jazz, they left something on your bedroom door. What? A photograph. What photograph? I don't know. I didn't touch it. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me. Stay at the store, I told Marcus. Don't come home yet. After I ended the call, Detective Morales immediately contacted officers to secure the apartment. Then Daniel spoke. Jasmine, there's something else you need to know. I looked at him. The person who attacked me wasn't trying to steal the flash drive. Then what were they trying to do? Daniel's eyes met mine. They wanted me to believe the flash drive was gone. He reached beneath his pillow. Then he pulled out a tiny black memory card. I made a backup. I stared at it. You still have it? Yes. What's on it? Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Your mother's original files. He placed the memory card in my hand. And if I'm right? He stopped. What? The person who betrayed me has been looking for your mother's evidence for 20 years. I stared at the tiny card. Then I realized something. If they had finally found me, they weren't just trying to silence Daniel. They were trying to finish what they had started with my mother. I barely slept that night. The memory card Daniel had given me was sitting inside a sealed evidence bag on Detective Morales's desk. She had insisted that we not open it until a forensic technician could examine it. I agreed. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. My mother had known Daniel. She had discovered millions of dollars being moved through fake companies. And someone had apparently spent 20 years making sure that information stayed buried. The next morning, Detective Morales called me. Jasmine, we found the photograph. My stomach tightened. What was it? Your mother. I stopped walking. Where? Inside your apartment. Was there anything written on it? Yes. What? She paused. On the back, someone wrote, "She knew too much." I closed my eyes. My mother had been dead for 3 years. Yet somehow, her past had just come back into my life. When I arrived at the police station, Detective Morales showed me the photograph. It was old. My mother was standing outside an office building beside 2 people. One was Daniel. The other was a woman I recognized immediately. Rebecca Lane. I stared at the photograph. That's Rebecca. Detective Morales nodded. She was an assistant accountant back then. I looked closer. My mother was holding a folder. Rebecca was smiling. Daniel was standing beside them. Why would someone leave this for me? Because they want you to know your mother wasn't alone. I looked at her. What does that mean? It means somebody may have been watching all 3 of them. That afternoon, Daniel was released from the hospital under police protection. He asked me to meet him at a private office owned by his attorney. When I arrived, Rebecca Lane was already there. She looked exhausted. Her expensive suit was wrinkled, and her hands were shaking. "Jasmine," she said. I didn't answer. She looked at Daniel. "You shouldn't have brought her here." Daniel replied, "She deserves the truth." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I should have told you years ago." "Told me what?" She took a deep breath. "Your mother didn't disappear from the company because she resigned." I felt my heart pound. What happened? She was forced out. By who? Rebecca looked at Daniel. Then she said a name. "Ethan." I froze. "Ethan Cole?" She nodded. "He was working security for the company even then." Daniel's face hardened. Rebecca continued. "Your mother found documents proving that Ethan was helping move money through the shell companies. But Ethan wasn't an executive. He didn't need to be." She explained that Ethan had access to confidential files, company vehicles, and executive schedules. He had been the perfect person to move information without attracting attention. Then Rebecca revealed something even worse. "The night your mother left the company, she gave me a copy of the evidence." I stared at her. "Where is it?" Rebecca looked down. "I destroyed it." My anger exploded. "You destroyed my mother's evidence?" I was scared. "You let her face this alone." "I know." Her voice broke. "I've regretted it every day." Daniel stepped between us. Rebecca kept one thing. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. There were only a few lines. "If anything happens to me, don't trust the people closest to Daniel." Then, underneath it, one final sentence. "The person who knows everything is not the person you think." I looked at Daniel. "What does that mean?" Before he could answer, his phone rang. He checked the screen. It was Ethan. Daniel answered on speaker. Ethan's voice was calm. "Daniel, I know where the evidence is." Everyone in the room froze. Daniel asked, "Where?" Ethan laughed softly. "Ask Jasmine." The call ended. I stared at my mother's note. And suddenly, I understood. The biggest secret hadn't been hidden in Daniel's company. It had been hidden in my family. And whoever was behind this had just realized that I was finally close enough to uncover it. "Ask Jasmine." Those were Ethan's last words before the call ended. Everyone in the room looked at me. I looked at my mother's note again. The person who knows everything is not the person you think. Then something clicked. Wait. I looked at Rebecca. "You said my mother gave you a copy of the evidence." Rebecca nodded. "What did she give you?" "A folder." "What was inside?" "Bank records. Names. Account numbers. Transfer dates." Anything else? Rebecca hesitated. A photograph. What photograph? She slowly pulled another picture from her purse. It showed my mother standing outside our old apartment. I stared at it. Then I noticed something behind her. A blue mailbox. My childhood home. I suddenly remembered something. When I was little, Mom had a metal box. Rebecca frowned. What kind? A blue document box. She kept it underneath her bed. Daniel looked at me. Do you still have it? I don't know. I called Marcus. He answered immediately. Jazz? Go to Mom's old storage boxes. Why? Just trust me. 20 minutes later, Marcus called back. I found something. My heart raced. What? The blue box. I closed my eyes. Don't open it. Why? Because I think someone has been looking for it. We arranged to meet at the police station. Inside the box, beneath old photographs and my mother's handwritten recipes, we found a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front. Jasmine. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter. My mother had written it years before she died. She explained that she had discovered the financial scheme, but she had also discovered something nobody else knew. Ethan wasn't the mastermind. He had been taking orders from someone inside the company. Someone who had remained hidden for years. I looked at Daniel. Who? He stared at the letter. Then his face changed. Rebecca. Rebecca began crying. No. Daniel looked at her. You knew? I didn't know everything. My voice shook. Then tell us. Rebecca finally confessed. 20 years earlier, she had been involved in the fraud. But she hadn't created it. She had only helped move documents. The person directing everything had been Daniel's older brother, Michael. Michael had died 12 years earlier. But before his death, he had transferred control of several shell companies to a private trust. And Rebecca had been managing that trust ever since. My entire body went numb. You? Rebecca nodded through tears. I was terrified. Michael threatened my family. After he died, I was too afraid to expose everything. Daniel looked devastated. So you've been protecting him all these years? I thought I was protecting myself. Then Detective Morales walked into the room. We have enough. She explained that the memory card contained financial records connecting Ethan and several executives to the scheme. The blue box contained my mother's original evidence. And the hospital footage placed Ethan at the scene. Within weeks, investigators froze the shell company accounts. Ethan was arrested. Rebecca agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. Several executives resigned or faced criminal charges. And Daniel publicly admitted that his company had ignored warning signs for years. But the biggest surprise came 3 months later. Daniel created a foundation in my mother's name. Not to erase what happened. Not to buy forgiveness. But to fund scholarships for people who had been pushed out of financial careers after exposing misconduct. He offered me a position helping run it. I almost said no. Then I remembered my mother. I accepted. Not because Daniel was a billionaire. Not because I owed him anything. But because I finally understood something. My mother hadn't spent her life trying to become powerful. She had simply wanted the truth to matter. One evening, months later, I stood outside the foundation's new office. Daniel walked beside me. You know, he said, I still can't believe you stopped that night. I smiled. I almost didn't. He looked at me. What made you? I thought about the dark alley. The cold pavement. The blood on his collar. And those frightened words. Maybe I just couldn't leave someone behind. He smiled. You saved my life. I shook my head. No. I looked through the office window at my mother's name on the wall. she saved yours. And for the first time in years, I felt like my mother's story wasn't ending with what had happened to her. It was beginning with what she had left behind. The lesson I learned was simple: sometimes the truth takes years to surface, but that doesn't mean it disappears. And you don't have to be rich, powerful, or important to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to walk away. What would you have done if you were in my situation? Would you have trusted Daniel, or would you have walked away from the entire situation? If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another karma story.